There are tons of Ashes of War in Elden Ring. Many are tied to somber weapons, but in today's video, I'm just going to go over my favorites of the modular ones, being the ones that you can equip to the normal smithing stone weapons. I'm going to be talking about these from a dueling perspective. I don't really invade that much, so I can speak more to their effectiveness in duels. Some of these are a lot more effective than others, but they're all still plenty of fun to use. I'll go over the ashes themselves, as well as the weapon types that I like to use them on, so hopefully it can inspire you guys to try some of them out. First off, we have Stomp. At first glance, it might not come across as very good. It does pretty minuscule damage and doesn't exactly look very intimidating. Most of you will know this, but I know there's at least some of you who won't. But Stomp actually guarantees you a punish depending on the weapon you're using. Not only that, but it grants you a crazy amount of poise when it's active, as well as dealing a massive amount of poise damage itself. This lets you trade very consistently, and while you won't always technically win the trade, it's a great tool to interrupt the opponent and put them on the defensive. Opponents can bait out the Stomp and space it for a punish, but most people can't do this consistently, and if you're using it to reaction trade or when they're already too close to space it, it's very safe. There are plenty of weapons to use this with. It's super versatile, which is a big reason why I love it. My favorite weapon to use this on is the Knight Rider Halberd. Not only does the light attack it chains into net you great damage, but if you simply chain it into a second light attack, it's a perfect roll catch for someone that's spamming roll trying to get out of the Stomp. I promise you if you try out this setup, you'll be getting the Stomp R1 combos in no time. Next up is Spinning Slash. I've been playing around with this one a ton recently, and it's a blast. This is one of the Ashes of War that actually changes based on the weapon type that you have it equipped to, and I don't actually think this is mentioned on the wiki for whatever reason. I tried this out on a halberd and a great spear without all that much success. The heavier weapon classes just don't seem to do that well with it, just because the slash comes out so slowly. So that leaves us with a light weapon to work with, and what I've been loving it on is the Nagakiba. It's a katana, so it's in the light weapon class, and having such long range at the same time makes it perfect for spinning slash. Pressing L2 once gets you one slash, and pressing it a second time chains into two more. What makes it so good is that landing the first slash true combos into the next two, making for a crazy high damaging Ash of War. For whatever reason, the third hit isn't actually guaranteed sometimes, and I think that has something to do with the opponent's poise resetting mid-combo, or potentially them just having a crazy amount of poise to begin with. Even without that being 100% consistent though, it still hits super hard, and has the speed and range to be a PvP powerhouse. I do like to run this with an offhand S-stock, but that's not necessary to its viability at all, of course. It's fantastic for trading with if you have high poise, and a bit of a sleeper Ash of War honestly. Next, we have Flaming Strike. The L2 lets you throw out a burst of flame with your offhand, which then allows you to chain a heavy attack. Not only does this buff the weapon with fire, but if you hit someone with the flame burst on a late enough frame, they stay stunned for long enough for the chained heavy to be guaranteed. This combo makes for massive damage when you land it. The initial flame attack lingers in the air deceivingly long, and this allows you to catch a lot of unsuspecting players. People will try to close the distance too early and end up getting hit by it, or if they play smart and keep their distance long enough before going in for an attack, at that point you can try and catch them with the heavy, or just simply press L2 again. That little mind game in itself makes Flaming Strike really strong since it's so hard to punish safely. Using it while someone is directly in your face is great as well. If they roll into you or to the side, the flames will still have an active hitbox that guarantees you that true combo. This is another Ash that I like to use on a halberd, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't work just as well on other weapons. Halberds just tend to be really good in general. Flaming Strike's menacing damage and difficulty to punish certainly makes it one of, if not the best Ash of War in the game to me. Next up, Beast's Roar. This Ash of War puts plenty of actual spells to shame when it comes to ranged pressure. There's not a whole lot to it, just press L2 for a fast traveling, long range projectile. It's pretty easy for people to dodge it if you're just using it from neutral and hoping it lands, but that's not really the way this thing should be used. It can definitely work sometimes just to catch someone rolling away from you, but otherwise its primary use is to punish casts or consumables that would otherwise be completely safe from a pure melee build. It's just a great tool to counter mages, and that makes it a must-have on most of my builds. If the opponent uses an FP flask or casts something that doesn't instantly proc like Glintblade Phalanx, it's just free damage, and not a small amount of damage by any means. Beast's Roar paired with the Roar Talisman sometimes hits over 500 or even 600 damage, and while the damage does drop off with range, it's still a fantastic range tool for any melee build. I've tended to use this on my power stance straight sword build and found that it fits pretty nicely, but there's no real wrong weapon to use it on. Lastly, we have Sword Dance. Similar to Spinning Slash, it has two different speed animations depending on whether you're using it on a light or heavy weapon. Although unlike Spinning Slash, I actually don't see the value of the extra speed nearly as much. I was liking using this on a halberd for the hefty damage and good range, and found that I was able to catch a lot of rolls with it and melt some health bars. It's one of the more risky Ashes of War on the list for sure, being one that's very easy to punish on a whiff, but when used correctly, it proves to be plenty useful. It's not great to use when you're on the defensive since it can be interrupted pretty easily, but it's a fantastic finishing tool for when you're on the offensive. It can close the distance to someone incredibly fast, which can take them off guard, and in the case that you whiff, or just as a general mix-up, an additional press of L2 will cause a third follow-up strike. The last swing is slow and has a long recovery, but it's still useful situationally. Sword Dance is plenty strong, and a fun sort of off-meta pick for the arena. And those are actually all the Ashes of War that I put together for this video. If you guys have your own personal favorites, I would love to hear them down in the comments. I love trying out new setups, and honestly the whole interchangeable weapon art system with the Ashes of War is one of my favorite things in Elden Ring. I hope you guys found the video helpful or inspirational when it comes to PvP Ashes of War. Good luck in the arena, and I'll see you next time.